Now, before we step into the next timeline, I want to take us back for a moment. Back to the way the women in my family actually quilted. Because long before the quilting bee, long before the world cared about G's Ben quilts, the women there already had their favorite patterns. They did not quilt alone, they quilted together. Most of those early quilts were made by many hands, even though only one name ended up attached to them. That's just the way things were done. Quilting was a shared act, a circle, a conversation, a way of caring for each other when there wasn't much else to give. And the place we now know as the Quilting Collective, that old familiar building, it wasn't always there. The men of the community built it, the same way they built their Roosevelt homes. And before the land was secured and the collective existed, the women gathered wherever they could, in each other's homes, in small wooden rooms, and log cabins the men raised from the ground. And when they quilted, they didn't just sew, they sang. Most times they sang to God, hymns and spirituals that kept their spirits steady while their hands worked. Their voices filled those cabins the same way the quilts filled their families' beds, with warmth, with comfort, with something to hold on to. Quilting wasn't just a craft, it was survival, it was fellowship, it was worship. It was the way families stayed warm and the way the women stayed connected. And inside those circles, certain patterns kept showing up. Patterns that became signatures of our families. Patterns that traveled from one generation's hands into the next. Even today, when you look at the documented collections of G's Ben quilters, you'll see the same designs repeating across decades, across bloodlines, across households. So I want to start with one of the patterns that almost every quilter in my family touched at some point. A pattern that carries both structure and spirit. A pattern that holds African memory, Southern survival, and generations of improvisation. The housetop. At its core, the housetop carries the old center-out way of building a design, a way of seeing the world that our ancestors brought from West Africa. But what makes this pattern truly special is how the women of G's Ben shaped it with their own hands, with their own minds, their own lives, and their own creativity. And in my family, that story begins in the 1920s with my great-grandmother, Martha Jane Pettway. She's the earliest documented master of the housetop in our line. Her quilt set the foundation, steady, centered, and full of a quiet power. She didn't work alone. Women like Prissy Carson and Henretta Pettway, remembered and documented through oral history, quilted right alongside her. Together, they created the first circle of this pattern's legacy. By the 1930s, the pattern was being carried forward by women like Carey George, who kept it alive through the Depression, and Arie Pettway, who helped keep the structure consistent from one generation to the next. In the 1940s, you see women like Lucy T. Pettway, who blended the older work clothes style with a more spontaneous feel, and Lottie Mooney, who anchored her family's connection to the housetop. Their quilt showed the pattern settling into its mid-century voice. By the 1950s, the housetop really starts to stretch. Aolar Carson Mosley expands the emotional range of the pattern. Willie Seltzer pushes it into bold, unexpected territory. Delia Bennett influences multiple branches of the community. Lucy P. Pettway brings in strong movement and contrast, and Creola Bennett Pettway blends the old work clothes feel with a new rhythm. This is the decade where the pattern becomes unmistakably G's Ben. Then the 1960s arrive, and the pattern grows up. Mary L. Bennett brings clarity and structure. Loretta Pettway becomes one of the most celebrated housetop makers of the century. Lillie Mae Pettway strengthens the Pettway-Mosley inheritance. hands, and Mae Bennett Irby adds her family's improvisational touch. By the 1970s, a whole new wave of powerhouses step in. Nellie Mae Abrams comes through with fearless color that hits you right in the chest. Lucy Mingo keeps everything steady and strong. She can build a whole world out of straight lines. Irene Williams does whatever she feels like doing, and it always works for her. Linda Pettway brings that soft emotional touch, sewing straight from her heart. Quinnie Pettway is holding the family down, raising up the next generation, including her daughter, Loretta Pettway Bennett. And Rita Mae Pettway is out here busting a pattern wide open, showing what freedom looked like in that moment. Together, their quilts show just how far the housetop could reach. In the 1990s, the museum era begins with Mary Lee Bendolph. Her housetop variations bring national attention and help the world understand the depth of this tradition. By the late 90s and early 2000s, Essie Bendolph Pettway becomes the bridge between the museum era and the quilters working today, keeping the pattern alive and evolving. And today, the housetop is carried forward by a living duo. Arie Pettway Williams, also the great-granddaughter of Martha Jane Pettway, my cousin, a documented housetop maker and teacher. She's got that Pettway rhythm in her, bold when she wants to be, soft when she needs to be, always trusting her own eye. And Marianne Pettway, Lillie Mae's daughter and Martha Jane's grandniece, stays out front showing folks what this tradition looks like today. She works with purpose. You can see the family line running straight through her hands. And she's also the current manager of the Geesman Quilting Collective. From my great-grandmother Martha Jane to my cousins, Andrea and Marianne, the housetop has remained more than a pattern. It's a family story, a community story, a living tradition that's still unfolding today.